We're here in London at Nielsen Norman Group's UX conference, where in Jakob Nielsen's keynote address, he discusses the findings of a research study that compares web design in 2004 to that in 2016.
Okay, so the first point is just this comparing what's happened on the web since 2004. So now, why did I pick 2004? Simply because in 2004, while Laurent and I did a big study for this book here that we published, Prioritizing Web Usability. So we did a big study, and I thought, I have all this old data, so now we can do the same study again and therefore compare. So here's a comparison between the two different studies. In both studies, we tested basically a wide scope, wide range of websites, 24 in the old days, 43 now, 69 users in 2004, 215 now. One difference other than the number is also we had a better balance this year between the US and the UK. We had people do a lot of different things, tasks. And the final is kind of like the last number is kind of like the raw data for the analysis, which is the number of data points, the number of attempts where one user is trying one thing on one website. That's what I call a task attempt. And then we'll see if that went well or went poorly. That's kind of what the data is about. So other than the fact that I have a bigger research budget now, it really was pretty much the same study. I had Amy Shade lead the new one, but other than that, it was the same. We really are looking here at desktop websites because that's what we had in 2004. We also did a study of mobile sites, but I'm not going to talk about that here because that can't be compared. We also tested a broad range of websites, of different genres, so e-commerce sites, big company websites, small company websites, which a lot of people don't tend to do. Entertainment and also news sites, that's something we did not actually test in the first study, but we tested it now. Government websites, again, also a range of sizes from the entire UK government or entire United States government down to states or like Scotland, for example, or individual cities. And also non-profit websites, another thing that many people ignore, but that users often spend a lot of time on. Okay, so just to kind of recap, in case your memory is not as strong as it should be, this is what the web looked like in 2004. Some of the sites we tested at the time, very typical websites for 2004. Basically, pretty crammed with links would be my main characterization of those sites. And these are some of the sites we tested now. I do want to comment on two sort of more general issues in kind of current web design, which I think if you compare with the previous slide and this slide is apparent. I think there's been really a loss of information density. And some of that is good because we don't want that complexity and busyness that was kind of apparent at the previous slide. However, we have much bigger screens now than we did in 2004. And so why do we have less information on a much bigger screen? I don't think you should have your entire homepage be like 3 cows and 4 icons. Should tell people more when you have this bigger screen. Another thing is we are seeing these not really pop-ups, but these overlays. So I thought that we had really killed the splash screens and stuff like that, right? Yes, we have, but they're just like The Walking Dead. Back to haunt us, So I don't know if these designers are just watching too much Game of Thrones or whatever it is, but it's zombie design, and it's back to haunt us. And I really want to get rid of these things like this example, even though it's a cute dog and all, but I want to get rid of that stuff. So this is what we tested. So let's now look at the results. So the first most basic one is, as I mentioned, we had these things called task attempts. Can people do what they're trying to do on the web? That's like the first and foremost, criterion for saying that something is good. And yes, indeed, people can do what they trying to do more now than they could in the past. So success rate is up. It was 66% in 2004, again, averaged over all these websites, and now it's 82%. And this is an improvement rate of 1.3 percentage points per year. And if we guess or assume that usability improvements in the web will continue the same pace as in the past, that means that the web will actually be good by 2030. So that's good prospects ahead. Now, so even though this is good news, right? So I want to actually just pause for a second. That this is actually good news. This means that all of us, we've actually done our work and done our job, and the users are benefiting from improved websites, improved usability. However, this is the simplest and most basic of the metrics we have, which is can people at all do what they try to do? This is not at all sufficient for good user experience, that it's possible to do something, right? You also want it to be fast and easy and pleasant and so forth. So let's look at that. So here we're looking at degrees of task success. And the green slice of this pie chart, which is called success with everything easy, that's really the true goal. People have no difficulty using the website. It just works smoothly. That's what we want, and that's only 30% of the time. So there's still far to go before we can really say we have good user experience on the web. Now we have the second slice here called success with minimal difficulty, which is 23%. And so that we might loosen our goal and say, well, people, a little bit that sort of small slows them down by a little bit, or where they say, this is annoying, but they can overcome it without too much trouble. Maybe we'll accept that. In that case, we are up at a little more than half of the task attempts that are either easy or with only minimal difficulty. But even minimal difficulty, I do say this is not our real goal. Our real goal is that green one, and that's only 30% right now. So there's still far to go before we really have good websites. So this was kind of the objective measure of task success. Another thing we looked at was the more emotional experience. So we looked at, and in this particular study, we looked at that by basically trying to classify people's thinking aloud protocols. So the vast number, more than half of these task attempts, there was no emotional content. So people were just like, yeah, it's, I'm doing it, basically. And that's fine, because most of the things you do on the web are not really emotionally engaging. They should just be like, they should just happen and be fine and so forth. But let's look at the ones that are either pleasurable or annoying. So in total, in 16% of the cases, there was some amount of pleasure, and in 30% of cases, there was some amount of annoyance. In other words, annoyance is twice as common as pleasure when using the web. Secondly, you can see like strong pleasure, which you might say, I don't really necessarily want to make that the true goal for websites, that people are like ecstatic every time they do something, like looking up the weather forecast or whatever you do on the web, but some people might say you want to do emotional design, you might aim for that, but that's only 1% of the time, so it's really pretty rare that people truly, truly love using a website. Okay, let's look at just a few examples of what I mean here. So this is one example of an e-commerce site that basically when you hover over the shopping cart, it tells you how much you spent so far. This is not like brilliant design or anything, but it's just like a little small pleasure right in the moment. Right when you need it, it's there. That's the kind of thing that people really appreciate, and you can see a few examples of appreciation expressed by the users. This is nice. That's what you want to hear, right? It's not ecstatic pleasure, but small pleasure. Another example from the Scottish site we tested, really beautiful picture they put here, really makes you want to be there. You can also see that it's not just expression of pleasure, it's also expression of kind of likely the site meeting its business goals as well. And I want to point out, this is not just, it's just a pretty picture that has nothing to do with, what the site is about. The site is about going to Scotland and seeing historical buildings and sites and all that, so having beautiful pictures of these buildings is a good thing to do. Expression of annoyance. This is not a website that is designed to be easy to use. This is a website that's designed to look good. This is one of the small business sites. It's a cleaning company, and people trying to find out kind of like what do they do, what's different about this cleaning company, and it's very difficult to find because information is scattered across many pages, very sparse. I talked before about information density, like low information density. You've got to like keep looking to get anything. Well, here we get some of the opposite problem, a big company website. There's way too many options up here. This is too much. Wow. I know, this is like a bad wow. This is why you can't just leave it a transcript of user comments, right? And just too much. Man, it's too overwhelming. So people are looking for something. If it's too much, this doesn't work. Here's an example. This is actually not from this study that I just mentioned. This is from a different study that we did in China, looking at the Chinese websites. And here we have some of the comments translated into English. The information is not at all related to us, the normal users. I will never make use of most of this information. It's too much. This site, yeah, it's got enough information. Again, that's not meant in a positive way here. You know, it reminds me of the party. And this is with a capital P, you know. Or the last user said, it just makes me be confused so I can get more money out of you. So again, you get these negative emotions out of a lot of these designs. So why, as I mentioned, the people who were successful most of the time, but they also did fail. So why did they fail? And so we've classified the failures by design problem, design mistake on the website. You can see here that the biggest, by far, biggest slice here is findability. So getting to where you need to be. Search is actually also a question of getting to where you want to be, but I'm sort of like dividing search versus kind of navigating up into two different slices here, just for the sake of interesting analysis, I guess. So that's a smaller one, but still big. So basically you can see here that those two together make up almost 3/4 of the problems. So getting to where you need to be in the website is the biggest problem. And then another about 1/4 is if you do get there, then what you find there is not what you need, and that's certainly bad as well. But we can definitely see that findability and search are the biggest issues. Let me give a few examples of that. So the UK government website, this is alphabetical listing, which makes finding stuff complicated because you have to know what they call things. So the users were looking for divorce. And so the first thing you have to do is you've got to look under M for marriage, which is not so bad because it wasn't like the opposite of marriage, right? But the two are kind of related, so I don't think that's super bad. But when you click on M for marriage, or marriage under M, then you get this long list of things related to various aspects of marriage that's alphabetical. And so now you might think, since it's alphabetical, that divorce is kind of like a common phrase, and you might look at under divorce. What you find under divorce is, under D rather, is divorce a missing wife or spouse, wife or husband. Now this of course obviously happens that your spouse is like gone and you want to get a divorce. So I can appreciate that special circumstances apply to convince the authorities that your spouse is actually gone or missing. But that said, it's not the most common case, right? So for normal divorce, you've got to look under G for get a divorce. And that's of course why alphabetical listings are often not very good. Okay, here's another example of this findability issues. The question here is find out how to prepare for a flood. And so first you've got to look under natural disasters. I think that's a reasonable one. And under natural disasters is a category for flood. Then you will arrive at this page here on the left, which is very nicely divided up into two categories, before the storm and after the storm. So far so good. Actually good design so far. Now, so what's information about preparing for a flood? It's under a link that's called Key Facts About Flood Preparation. And users didn't click that because the information sent is wrong. What do you think you're going to get under Key Facts About anything, right? You would expect to find something like, X% of households are ill prepared for a storm. Or if you worry about flooding, these are the states that have low flood risks, and these are the states where you get flooded all the time. Whatever. I mean, key facts about floods, you would imagine that type of stuff. So it doesn't have that information that says actionable things to do when it's called key facts. Here we have one of the small company sites we tested, an eye doctor. So to find out information about contact lens prescriptions, can you get contact lenses on your first visit to the eye doctor? is the question. And people had a very hard time discovering the answer to that because of the writing on this page, which, particularly the first paragraph, as we all know, that's the most important one for deciding whether this page is the right or the wrong one. And there's no little kind of like silver bell that goes off that says, this is ding, 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 this is the right page, read it carefully. So people don't do that. And it's just stuffed with keywords and convoluted, complicated vocabulary. So I bet you this page was designed for SEO reasons, not for actual use. And so it made it hard for people to use. On this website, people were trying to find, where can I buy this product locally? And there is, in fact, you can probably not really read it, but there's kind of a big red box that, not big, but there's a clear box there that has that information. You can click and find this information. But people did not see this out in this corner. You see the 3 cows are back. They didn't see that because that area, I mean, banner blindness, how, this has been known for more than 15 years. I've personally written countless articles about it. And people still make these designs and then they fail miserably. So just a few blocks from here, British Museum. This site failed in task support for the problem of, actually the problem that maybe some of you will have, that the conference ends Friday and then Sunday morning I can go to the museum because my flight is not home until Saturday afternoon. So what can you do Saturday morning? This is very difficult to find because the structure of this information of the tours is kind of like by the types of tours, how it's provided. So that makes the site very suitable if you have the question that says, I want to learn about the Parthenon, and when should I show up at the museum to hear that lecture? But the reverse task, which is common for some type of tourist anyway, which is, I have a certain day or time when I can go to the museum. What will you have for me if I come, let's say Saturday? That you have to like piece it together yourself by going to a lot of different places and look and look and look. So that's really, really bad. Here's a site that sells headphones, and the task was to find headphones under $300. Now you might think that this site supports this task very well because there is in fact faceted navigation by categories including price. You can see the little check boxes up here, price, under 50, 50, so forth. And they're check boxes, so I can just check. A little bit annoying, I have to check 3 check boxes, but I could do that. No. When you check 1 check boxes, the others are removed. So you can only see 1 price range at a time. And again, it's a very common user task to see, I want to see something that costs less than whatever my budget is. So, and plus, it's like egregious violation of one of the oldest graphical user interface design guidelines, which is radio buttons versus checkboxes. So that's another reason that this design didn't work. Okay, so to recap, so this was what I just discussed, the causes of failure on current websites. But of course, we did the exact same study before. So here are the reasons people failed back in 2004. And what can we see? We can see that findability was always a big one. Search was always a big one, but they kind of like dominate much more now. Whereas things like, once I get to the page, what information am I given? What is the page design, task support and stuff? And fancy design, which I've always loved to preach against, that's things like big animations and stuff. That's also down. So now, one thing though, so if you compare these 2 pie charts, you might think that findability is actually worse now, but that's not the case, because remember that we had a much higher success rate now than we had before, and reverse of success rate is failure rate, so we have much fewer failures now than we had before. So a bigger percentage of a smaller number. So what I really want to do is I want to look at it in absolute. So of all the tasks people did, how many of them failed due to various problems in 2004 and 2016? You can see for all of the categories, except findability, but for all of the categories, people actually have less trouble now. For findability, it's actually not worse, it's the same. Actually, it's marginally better, but it's the same. Now, kind of in fairness to the world's information architects, I should say that, of course, the problem of designing for findability is harder now because there's just much more stuff on the websites today than in 2004. But users, of course, don't care about your excuses. So it is still really hard to get to the right page. So information architecture is really a crucial thing, and that's worth attending to. And I apologize that now that you know this, our information architecture course was already gone a few days ago, so too bad about that. But it is really important. On the other hand, if you look at search, you can see that search has actually become not maybe as much better as some of the others, but still a good deal better. And now we all kind of love to complain about site search, and that this search on a lot of websites is really poor. But that's really in a more kind of like relative sense, because we're comparing it to things like Google and Bing and these various big search engines, which are actually by now pretty good, because those guys have like almost infinite budgets to really work on making their stuff great. And so compared to that, the search on a website, individual website, tends to be rated poorly, and users will very often, our studies say things like, man, this site is hard to search, I'm going to go to Google. And we all know that once people go to Google, you have lost that customer, high probability. So that's why it's really important, even though it has gotten better, to really, really still work on improving the site search. But honestly, compared to how it used to be, the site search has in fact become better.